Hi, good morning everyone. A special good morning to our lecturer, Dr. Shahida Hussein. My group consists of Selina Ramzan, Jade Batiste, Aliyah Koram, Shanaz Khan, Chena Marie Williams, Karishma Supnanan, and myself, Tiffany Francis. Today, we'll be giving you some insight on the consequences of unification on education in Tobago.
In the late 19th century, there was an important era in the history of the Twin Island state of Trinidad and Tobago. During the years of the 80s and 80s-90s, these islands underwent the process of unification, where Tobago was declared a ward of the island of Trinidad in 1899.
The process of unification predated the 1880s, as it was an empirical dictate of the British Empire in the closing years of the 19th century. The unification of these colonies was saturated with issues of political, economic, and social change. So this means that unification took place up till 1880s, and the British Empire was responsible for this, and there were many problems that was associated with unification, and these were political, economic, and social.
By 1886, the Secretary of State for the Colonies announced the intention to annex Tobago to Trinidad and gave two options. Option 1 was that the colony of Tobago may be wholly and completely incorporated with the colony of Trinidad. And option 2 was that the colony of Tobago may be annexed to the colony of Trinidad as a dependency and having a separate treasury and subordinate legislature holding to Trinidad the same relation that the Turks and Caicos do to Jamaica. On the 19th of January 1887, the Tobago Legislative Council agreed unanimously to the second option, as well as negotiating that there may be free trade and common external tariffs.
Of course, there were consequences of this unification on both islands, but as I said in the introduction, we'll be focusing on the consequences of the unification to education in Tobago. So, let's not wait any longer.
Tobago was allowed its own Board of Education, chaired by the Commissioner between 1889 and 1998 because it had one previously. In Tobago, they petitioned Governor Robinson to save them from falling under jurisdiction of the Board of Education. In Trinidad, which was dominated by the Roman Catholic, Robinson agreed but imposed inspection from Trinidad upon Tobago schools. This was not carried out regularly because Tobago had to pay for their own inspection and because the Education Administration of Trinidad were not over-anxious to take on their responsibility of administering the Tobago schools. In 1892, 1895, and 1896, assistant inspectors Charles Hobson and William Robinson were sent to Tobago to examine schools and advise Tobago administration.
Naturally, the reports were not flattering. Judged from the standard of Trinidad schools and Tobago schools, needed more and better trained teachers, improved organization, and a larger subsidy from government. There were no female teachers, no pupil teachers taking examinations. Far too few of the head teachers, in fact, only 6 out of 20 had certificates, and none of these were obtained in Tobago. 14 of the 20 teachers were Creole Tobagonians, and only 2 of the 14 had managed to obtain certificates, both from the Miko Charity Teachers Training School in Antigua. Most of the schoolhouses, especially those of the Church of England, were dilapidated. The Moravians had the best buildings. The 2 top schools were conducted by the Moravians. But, ironically, these 2 head teachers were among those without certificates. Assistant Inspector Hobson felt that it would have been better to amalgamate a few of the schools. Mistakenly, He thought that because all the schools had then gotten government aid were Protestant, a policy of amalgamation could be carried out without rancor.
The Board of Education of Tobago was unable to move the Tobago schools appreciably in the direction desired by Hobson. It lacked the fund and the will, but the reports by an outside expert, Hobson, were used by the teachers in Tobago to lobby for more pay and by some clerical managers to get more funds for their school at the expense of rival schools which had received unfavorable reports. Not anticipating that Tobago would be fully amalgamated with Trinidad, the Board of Education rejected some of Hobson's advice. It also indicated a preference to modify rather than adopt entirely the education code of Trinidad in order to meet Tobago's need. As far as Hobson's was concerned, it was always a matter of Tobago adjusting to the code of Trinidad.
In education, Tobago had 27 schools in the year 1899, 23 schools in 1891, and 40 years later it only had 13 more schools. The population increased by 66,007, which is basically 26% between the years 1901 and 1931. There were, however, sufficient schools placed both in the years 1899 and 1933. Enrollment had doubled between the inauguration of the Union with Trinidad and 1933. However, though, in every village had a school a mile away.
In 1998, Trinidad and Tobago had its own separate independent education systems. Trinidad and Tobago became a ward after a tight monetary policy was in effect. Though the cost of living in Tobago was lower, teachers in Trinidad and teachers in Tobago, their salaries differed. Teachers in Trinidad earned more than the teachers in Tobago. Teachers in Tobago had to be given a sizable pay increase, or the government would have to work out a lower salary scale for teachers in Tobago to be paid. There had been a separatist view that was made exclusively by the Tobagonians. The education system in Tobago did not quite fit with the education system in Trinidad easily. This was because Tobago wanted their own separate identity apart from Trinidad and their own separate education system. Up until this point, all the schools in Tobago were denominational schools. They were either run by the churches or any other religious institution. Roman Catholics throughout the world and in Trinidad are such a great major force. But who would have guessed that they were weaker in Tobago? Of course, there were no Indian or Presbyterian schools in Tobago. The Methodists and the Moravians were the main educators in Tobago. The first decade of the 20th century marked the beginning of technical and vocational education, which was brought on by the Board of Industrial Training. In 1925, Tobago received its first secondary school, Bishop's High School. High School was established because of the creative energies between the Bishops Annecy Church of England and Archdeacon H.R. Davies. James Bigot was also a big factor in the school's establishment. In the 1920s, integrationists, which were the education authorities, started noticing the difference and the big gap between the primary schools in Trinidad and Tobago. So for the primary schools, a modernized curriculum was set, but Tobago was left behind. James Bigot noticed that Tobago was left behind, so he brought it to the attention of the education authorities in Tobago to let them know that all was not well with the education system and the schools in Tobago.